IBOLC is definitely in full swing now, if you haven't been able to tell by my wonderfully dead voice and almost closed eyelids. This past week we've basically been hitting on shooting, just qualifying, zeroing, just super basic stuff that everyone does, a good refresher, and just getting some serious trigger time.
One green.
But basically in this time, you're just zeroing your sights both with iron and the red dot sight. You do a lot of practicing with just shooting, and then ultimately you go to qualify with both iron sights and the red dot sights. Funny story about that though. So it comes to zero my iron sights. The first day of shooting here at IBOLC, I go in, I feel good, feel comfortable, and then I start shooting and I'm shotgunning all over the paper. Literally the worst I've ever shot. No tight grouping whatsoever. Like shot in this corner, one on the board, one disappeared magically, and then one in a different area. Completely random. I was just thinking shooting's a perishable skill. I honestly have not shot the target for the last 2 years. So this is the first time in a while I've done that. So I was just thinking I was rusty, I needed to work. I went through that whole day and I could not zero to save my life. Eventually I got it kind of down to a somewhat decent grouping, and they basically called it as good enough, and then I moved on. And so the next day we were qualifying with our iron sights. This is where the targets pop up. You gotta shoot them as they go, and they're at various ranges, and generally you don't know when or where they pop up, so you just kinda gotta be ready. And the score is out of 40. First round I got a 22, which is just short of qualifying. But let it be noted that qualifying, the bare minimum, is a terrible score. If you get a 23, which is the lowest score to get, that's really bad, especially if you're in the infantry branch. You should be getting 30 or higher typically. And so I was a little shocked. I had always been a decent shooter, and I was thinking maybe I'm just really rusty, or maybe my zero is messed up. Eventually I barely qualified. I get a super low score, but I still counts. And so they just kind of passed me through to the next thing. And so later that night, we're shooting with our night vision goggles using the lasers on the front of our weapons. And on that too, the first iteration, I got a 5 out of 20, which is a failing. Next iteration, I got a 7 out of 20, which is again, the lowest qualifying score you can get. Absolutely terrible. I was super depressed that I'm getting these numbers, but with how I've been shooting at all that week, I was just happy to qualify. Next day comes, and it's time to throw on our red dot sights and start zeroing those in, and then qualifying with those two. I'm feeling better. I'm thinking maybe it's just because we were shooting with iron sights. Maybe I'm just super off on that and something was off in my brain. I don't know. But I felt that the red dot sight would help me and get me squared away. Start zeroing with the red dot sight, again, scattering everywhere. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm shooting all over the page. I'm missing random shots. Shots are hitting the wood and the frame that's holding the target. I'm just having an awful time. And I do that for probably 4 or 5 rounds until I talk to the head marksman coach that teaches here at IBOLC. I talked to him, he said shoot one more iteration while he was coaching me, and then if that still didn't work, he would use my rifle to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. But the thing is, in the Army, saying that you can't shoot because your rifle is broken is the worst thing you could possibly ever say. Because when it comes to shooting, there's like 100 things you can control and 1 thing you can't. And the one thing you can't is the rifle, but 999 times out of 1,000, it's the 100 things that you can control that you're not doing correctly. And so the stereotypical thing that people would do is say, my rifle's broken, that's why I can't shoot right. And so I refuse to be that lieutenant that just goes up and says, I don't think I'm shooting right because my rifle's probably broken. Because there is a 99.99% chance that that was not the case. So he coaches me, I shoot another grouping, all over the page. Then the IBOLC marksmanship instructor, who's like an expert shooter, this is all he does, takes the rifle, goes to 0, and shoots all over the page. Then turns to me and says, your rifle's broken. I was so happy that I literally threw my hands up in the air and was just jubilant. That was a word, but it's an accurate one. So all that time, my rifle was actually broken. And then he made fun of me. And so lesson learned, sometimes it is the rifle, but it's probably not.